I just want to take a few minutes here, maybe 5 or 10, to discuss how our software can be used in leadership giving to take the data that's in the source systems, create metrics out of it, and then use that for coaching tips and best practices with the team. Just in the context, we also do a lot of work with senior management and campaign results and pushing out snapshots and scorecards to the team. A bunch of work in annual giving, looking at appeals and their impact on retaining donors, reacquiring lapsed donors, and segmenting and so forth. We just have had some great results here. For example, one client was able to cut back its end-of-the-year mailing fees by 25% and tripled the revenue because they focused it more effectively. We also do a lot of work in prospect research, which is a lot about slicing, dicing lists, and creating scoring indices, a lot of it around attachment to find the right prospects for different ask areas, and of course, more detailed data analytics. But let's just look at one here and just run through some scenarios. I'm going to click, it's going to open a browser, and it's going to open a web version of our software. It's unpacking data that was captured the day before into RAM, and it's going to open up in the browser a project with a set of pages, which I'll work through. It's fairly typical. The load time is 10 to 20 seconds, and this would have loaded a bunch of proposal tables, context tables, probably 20 to 50 database tables out of the Blackbaud CRM or the Ellucian Advance or the Banner Millennium, whatever system it was. There's this descriptive text on the left that describes what I'm looking at, and then there's a project with about a dozen pages, and we're going to walk through them. The first page is a dashboard, so it's a at-a-glance view of what's going on with my pool. 22 staff, 8,593 prospects, a bunch of proposals are actually out. The expected ask out of this is $437 million. Compare it with the current year expected amount, which is a calculation off the capacity rating and attachment score of each prospect. So, for example, if somebody's got a capacity rating of $1 million and they're highly engaged, we'd say that's ought to be worth about $300,000 of expected value. There's some studies that would normalize that. If they're disengaged, you might take it and multiply it by 1 or 2%. So that $1 million is worth $10,000 or $20,000. So people who have high capacity, highly engaged donors, the number is going to come up, and you'd expect this to be a 2 to 3 coverage ratio. This is a little tight. It's at least over 1. And then I've got over here some metrics. Looking at assignments per officer, you'd expect 125. If I'm running this team, I've got an awful lot of over assignments here we probably ought to work on. I look at visits in the last 12 months, which is a moving window. Generally, you expect between each field officer to be doing between 75 and 150. This team, I've got some people who aren't as active as I'd like. And generally, the management likes to look at visits fiscal year to date. We don't like this as much because in the summer it's going to be very little. By June, it pretty much equals visits last 12 months, and on July 1, it clicks back to nothing. And visits last month is an idea of recent activity. And then we've taken the proposal pool down here, and this is a view of revenue generation. So each of these blocks, like this is Nancy Berrios, she's in the leadership giving group. And here's the VP of development. Looks like it's got Tracy and Michael Ortiz, and then there's some satellite schools, the law program, the mayor program, and some other stuff. You'd like these things to be big and green. Nancy's doing great. I mean, she's big because she's got 64 million of expected ask out there. And she's got a 2.23 coverage ratio, which makes her green. The scale runs from red is 0, and real good is like a 2.86 coverage ratio. And again, that's summing the expected ask and dividing it by the sum of the capacity times the attachment scores of the prospects. And Francesca Peachtree has a much smaller pool of solicitation out, but she's bright green. She obviously has lower rated prospects than probably Nancy, so that's actually her whatever it is. It looks like solicitation level is good. I'm concerned about the law schools over here because they're small and red, so they're not getting much out, and relative to the capacity of the ratings, they're low. The VP is actually red with a 0.9 coverage ratio. We see this a lot because the VP often gets the really high-rated prospects and has a bunch of others, and she can't, or in this case here, she can't possibly cover them all, so the pools are usually too big. This should be cut back. And John Brown's, look at him over here, he's got a lot out, but he's red with a 0.63 coverage ratio, so I'm probably a little concerned that maybe John's under asking. So that's my takeaways from this page. Next page is contacts. So typically these teams like to see contacts. We like the last 12 months. Last 12 months, got contacts fiscal year to date, contacts last month, visits last 12 months. This, again, is moving 12-month window. Unique visits last 12 months, visits year. So people can like look at this, and there's a bunch of stories in here. And there's some filters around the page. One thing I would look at, and I'm looking for outliers. I mean, I look at this visits last 12 months by prospect, and you see there's a bunch. You know, if you focus on visits, well, these people have been visited 16, 16, 16, and 17 times in the last 12 months. That's a lot. It's more than once a month. It's like once and a half a month. Who's doing this? Well, John Brown's got 2 of them and has done 33 of these visits, and Gretchen's got 2 of them and has done 32 of these visits. Wow. Let's get rid of everybody else and go to the next page, the contact details. So here I've got, you know, for Roy Agrawal, which is one of John's prospects, I can sort of see this is actually continued back in time. There's been like continued contacts across this, and here's the contact report. So I've got the actual detailed notes, which I can read through and see like what's actually going on here. And then somebody might say, you know, what's been the giving history? Maybe there's awesome giving that's increasing. So let's check it out. So yeah, the 4 prospects have collectively given $1,200, $600 each for those 2, nothing for the others, and it was a while back. So this is certainly going to drive some discussion, and we probably want to figure out why the overload on these 4 prospects. Taking this a bit further, what we really like, instead of looking at the visits, is the concept of prospect penetration. So over here, you know, these are rows, or this one is Heather Ashford. It'll come up in a minute, the brush up. And she's got, you know, the width is how many prospects she has, and then it's colored by these different penetration levels. She's got 481, so she's got a lot. And then the red, there's a lot of red here. The red is, in the last 12 months, there's been no proposal and no contact whatsoever. So these people are basically untouched. The rest of the colors, the blue is the best. They've got a proposal and been visited in the last 12 months. The light blue is they've got a proposal but haven't been visited, no proposal, contacted in some way. And we're looking at it like the field officer owns the prospects. It gets counted if they get the dean or the president or somebody else to do the visit. That's great. So we're measuring here kind of the impact and the velocity with the prospects. Let's sort of just grab this group. So up at the top, Tracy Roberts, she's got a small pool, total of 113. That's a good pool, although we saw she's the VP. She had some issues with under-asking. We might want to cut this back, but at least she is getting herself or her team to reach 81% of this group. That's good. You know, Heather's actually doing pretty good considering she's got this massive pool. We ought to cut it back. You know, John Brown is reaching, he's got 190. He's getting to 125, which is good, but he's leaving, you know, 35% uncovered. If I go down this thing, here's like somebody who's got a small pool. Don Cerritos has 39. He's only been able to reach 16 of them in some way in the last 12 months. Something is like not right there. And I can keep going down. So this gray is a problem because it means I've identified prospects, I've assigned them out, and they're not getting covered. And, you know, so this begs a lot of issues right off of this. Let's reduce the pool sizes. Let's get some of this, make sure everybody's focused on, like here's Marilyn Polwick's got a lot, but she's only been able to connect with 57 of them in the last 12 months. Something's wrong. The next thing we want to look at, so that's a more strategic view than just looking at contacts, is we want to look at stage moves. So here, in this chart that's coming up, we're looking at 5 stages: qualification, cultivation, solicitation, verbal commit, and pending close. And each of these circles is a prospect. That'll come up in a second. And so one topic is sometimes we end up with customers or clients that have 2 stages, open and closed, and we'll have a discussion and say that's really not enough. We had another one that had 15 stages, and there were these debates about, is this thing in stage 7A or 7B? That's not good either. 5 is a good number. These are reasonable stages. And what this is this, yeah, there's actually a stack of things in here, but there's one here that's, here's this prospect, this big red one is Sammy Keneally is the prospect. Tracy Roberts owns it. It's a $10 million expected ask. It's been in cultivation 20 months. That's a long time. Here's one up here that's moved through pretty quickly. This is Gretchen Mayer is the owner, and it's a $5 million. It's 23 months, and it's in pending close. There's a group down here in qualification that have been in qualification more than 6 months. Let's zero in on that. It's 18 staff, 218 prospects. It's a lot of expected ask, $141 million. Here's a list. Let's go back to this heat map on the prior page and see if we see concentrations. This is the same one that was on the first page. It's just lined a little differently. Nancy Berrios, so the coloring are the ones of hers that are in that stage 1. It's like 24% by value of all of her expected asks in qualification. Not terrible. Here's where we see Tracy Roberts has a lot of them of her pool, and we saw she's red, so her pool is probably a little bit big and should be cut back. I mean, she's got presumably the high-rated prospects. Let's split them. Tally Goldman is actually really struggling. I mean, she's got almost her entire pool is in qualification over 6 months. Something's wrong here. You know, John Brown is moving him through really well, but we've already see he's red, so he may be under asking. So different stories start coming up from this, and I could explore Tally. Just click her here. Go back to the stage moves. They're all, like all of her pool is down here in qualification, cultivation. Nothing has advanced, and she's been on the team like 3 years now. Let's zero in on her. Look at proposal by prospect. She's got a lot, 293, a little bit of ask, way below the expected value. And, you know, boy, she's not visiting many. Here's some details. Here's one of hers is Rich Jezma. Active pending ask 5 million, expected value 660, a 1 to 5 rating, strong. So, but this is an aggressive ask, and I'm actually seeing generally she's trying to over ask people, and she's not getting many. I'm seeing activity. I'm going to have a discussion, and maybe with the team like Tally, you know, what's going on? Why are we getting so stuck here? What can we do? If I go back here to the this page, let's bring everybody back, and grab John Brown. So John, you know, has very little stuck in stage 1. Great job, you know, especially the big ones, the bigger circles or the bigger expected ask. He's got 1 all the way through to pending close in 14 months. This is awesome. Best of breed here. Great job. But we see he's red, so let's go over here. Proposals by prospect. You know, he's got pool's a little big, not bad. He's reaching a lot more of them with visits. That's great. But what's up here? So here's Murray Gillespie, $5 million pending ask, 21 million expected value. Well, this is a 50 million plus capacity rating, strong affinities, already given 2.2 million. So he's getting rated down because this looks low. So we ought to have a discussion with John about, you know, can we push this higher? Why couldn't this be 20 million or 10 million or even more? Why don't we see if Murray would actually want maybe the med school naming? I mean, this person could give $60 million, has the capacity. Maybe we can name one of the schools or key programs and just sort of, let's talk this through. So that's the kind of thing this gets used for, and it's these charts all work together as you've seen and help just get the stories out. And if I go back to the beginning, you know, the dashboard, you know, there's some insights that come from this, but it's drilling into, you know, not just the contact levels, but the concentration of the contacts and the penetration. There's issues here with this pool. And then it gets into stage moves. And stage moves balance with ask levels. And, you know, if we could keep going, there's actually completes. You know, here we've got granted and declines. You want to see this balance out. And then we actually want to ultimately get to cash flow. We want to see the cash flow spread over time. But that's what this is about. And, you know, we're taking the data from the source systems and doing a bunch of metrics calculations when we load it that generally aren't done in the database, and we're driving it up to this level. And this works really well when the management can get the team in the room and use this to drive a discussion with the concept of, you know, coaching tips and best practices. And let's help each member of this team do better, because we're better if everybody does really well. And we raise more money, it gives us more budget, and we can just sort of keep this thing moving. So that's the deal. Thanks for your time.